Fennell, thanks for being a part of tonight's program. He was the man and the face most associated with the disaster of Hurricane Katrina. With the people scattered, shattered, desperate, and in ruin, they hoped that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, would be their savior. And the man at the helm charged with getting that job done was Michael Brown. But in the wake of the storm, it became clear that the government on all levels was failing miserably, and Michael Brown found himself pushed to the bottom of the rubble, in the public's point of view anyway. Some would say he was pushed in front of the bus, the scapegoat, the fall guy.
And Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. The FEMA director's working 24 hours. They're working 24 hours a day.
Those words from President Bush as he tried to put a rosy spin on an obviously rotten mess. But Brownie couldn't be saved. He would eventually walk away from FEMA and the Bush administration with a story still to be told and unsolved business as to what really went wrong and who was really to blame after Katrina had long blown away.
You should come over here and sit in this chair and see how protected you feel. Feel how it feels to be yanked out of where you were trying to do your damnedest to make something work and told to go back home and make the decision that you're going to quit because you're no longer effective. And you're no longer effective because the media is spreading lies about a resume.
No, because you didn't do a good job is why you were let go. Because you were clueless about what was happening.
Well, now, in an irony of ironies, Michael Brown is back and in a new role with a new company. He is senior advisor and policy advocate for Inforex, a technology company aimed at rectifying many of the government's issues that contributed to the failures of Hurricane Katrina. And he's joining me now to talk more about this, to talk about the past, the present, and the future as it relates to managing real-time homeland security, fraud, and intelligence issues. Mr. Brown, thanks for being a part of the program.
My pleasure, Art. Thanks for having me.
Well, I want to talk about several things, and believe me, I do want to talk about Inforex because I'm very interested in hearing about that, and I have several questions for you regarding that. But I do want to clear up this matter of the record as it relates to Hurricane Katrina. Now, nearly 2 years later, are you more eager to have an opportunity in a forum to set the record straight as you see it, or is this still more of a lingering pain for you?
Well, it's always going to be a lingering pain because you can't go through that kind of traumatic experience without having some lingering pain. But look, how many people really get these kinds of second chances where the media at first bashes you, then the media comes out and says, you know what, you were right, this system doesn't work. I think when the Associated Press released that videotape of me briefing the president, telling people how bad it was and what we needed to do, and the president seemingly disengaged, I think at that point people recognized that maybe this guy really was trying to do everything he could, but the system that the Bush administration had set up in the Department of Homeland Security simply did not work.
And do you still blame the media in this, or do you squarely lay the blame on the Bush administration for putting you out as becoming the fall guy?
Well, no, that's the fault of the administration. Look, when the president, you showed that clip, when the president said, Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job, I knew at that very instant that I was being thrown under the bus because I had just told the president exactly how bad it was and how things were not working, how I'd been asking for the 82nd Airborne and still didn't have the 82nd Airborne yet. So I knew at that very moment that being the low guy on the totem pole, that bus was coming at me 90 miles an hour.
You were vilified in the public's point of view, as we said, and a lot of people, no matter how hard you tried to scream and say, look, there's some things that you just don't know here. People just weren't buying it. Do you, at this point, take any blame in anything that happened during Katrina and the days after Katrina?
Oh, absolutely, Art, and I've done that from the very beginning. There were several mistakes that I made. Number one was that we didn't publicly say at the very beginning how dysfunctional things were. We didn't talk about the fact that we couldn't get supplies in. We talked about, and I've actually gone back and looked at these talking points, and it's amazing because the talking points are factually correct. FEMA was moving more equipment and supplies in than we had in any other disaster. Factually true, but in context, it's totally out of touch with reality. We should have said we're moving all of these things in, but it's still not enough. Instead of putting my arm around Governor Blanco and talking about what a great teamwork we have here, I should have been honest and said the state of Louisiana is not functioning properly, and so therefore, as I recommended to the president, we should have federalized that operation and taken over everything.
Yeah, well,
so there are a lot of mistakes that I made.
Sure. Well, you talked about, and you've been very candid about that. I appreciate that. You just talked about moving supplies in, and I'm moving now to your new company, Inforex, and bear with me as I try and go around this circle. Part of the supplies that were moved in were all of those trailers. I've been to New Orleans. I saw in the Gulf region. I've seen all of those trailers around there and know how desperately the people needed them. But yet and still, those trailers just sat in that open field, and many of those trailers, so many of those trailers just went unoccupied. It was a clear case of government just gone wrong. Now, how can Inforex try to help correct massive problems like that?
Well, right now, this is hard to believe, but the Department of Homeland Security is comprised of 22 different agencies, all of which have their own information technology systems. So when we talk about data mining going on in Homeland Security, there is no connecting of the dots. And the other thing that concerns me is not only are we not connecting the dots, but DHS is saying to the airlines, to the shippers, you give us your databases and we're going to look through those. Well, that, as a private citizen, that scares the heck out of me. What Inforex is able to do is use inferencing algorithms to leave those databases where they are, with the shippers, with the airlines, and then use these algorithms to only extract the data that shows a pattern that we should look at. And that way we protect privacy and we are able to connect the dots, something that's not happening now.
So this is a very high-tech company that can really try and straighten out some of the mess as it relates in Homeland Security issues and beyond that. There's also been the issue of formaldehyde, and I know that the lawsuits are stacking up now as to the people who've been living in those trailers. And I understand that Inforex might also be able to help clarify some of that.
Absolutely, because what the Inforex technology can do is it can track everything through the supply chain. So if there's any anomaly, something comes from a strange shipper, something comes from a strange supplier, or there's some sort of strange material that doesn't fit in, that data point is instantly recognized, it elevates it to the next level, and some human analyst can look at it and say, that's not right, we should stop that. So it gets stopped before you suddenly have, 20,000 trailers with formaldehyde. It stops that from getting to that point.
Is this something that could have helped to save your reputation, maybe even your job, if Inforex had been there and if you'd had an opportunity to access it when you were there?
Well, absolutely. In fact, I go back to 2004 during the Florida hurricanes. If you recall, we had 4 hurricanes strike Florida in 2004. And one of the criticisms I received after that was we had too much fraud in the state. Well, one reason we have so much fraud is that, Congress puts the pressure on you to push as much aid out the door as fast as you can. But yet we have no way to track where that aid's going or if it's necessarily going to the right people. And once again, this kind of inferencing algorithms that Inforex uses would allow us to track that and see if it's actually going to the correct individuals and stop it before it occurs.
Very, very interesting. Final question. In the days after Katrina, in the days after you left FEMA, have you had an opportunity to speak with President Bush one-on-one privately to say, hey, Mr. President, you left me hanging high and dry?
No, I haven't. I haven't attempted to, and I frankly have no desire to.
I understand that. Michael Brown, good luck to you with Inforex. It sounds like a fascinating company, a cutting-edge company, and I'm sure we'll be hearing much more about it. And let's hope that it can do some good when it relates to the public trust and the public security and fraud issues.
Thanks. Thank you, Art.
Okay. All right. Well, what do you think about that? A good opportunity to hear from Michael Brown himself and not through others' interpretations through the media. You heard it straight from him. Was he the fall guy, unjustly pushed out? There's still some lingering bitterness there, and maybe understandably so. Email me your thoughts on this, cn8.tv. Click on the icon for Art Fennell Reports. I'd love to hear from you.